My name is Allison, and Taylor is my little sister, but you will often hear her referred to as Lauren. My dad and I call her Taylor and have since she was born, so there's no confusion there. My dad is Brian Agee, and Taylor's dad is also Brian Agee. So we have the same dad, but we have different moms. Sherry was my stepmother. Long time ago, obviously, she had Taylor Lawrence when I was about 9 years old. Taylor was born when I was about 9 years old, and when she was a toddler and even into 4 or 5 years old, she was super playful, very energetic, very outspoken, even as a little girl. We would often play games in the car and we would play music. And if I started to sing, Taylor would immediately throw her hands at me from her car seat and say, "Stop, it's my song. You don't sing." And we did it purposely because we knew that she would have fun with it. And at home, she was a spitfire. She was always into something. She was always into my stuff. But we played good together, and we were good buddies, even at a 9 year age separation. And then as we, grew up, we got to share a lot of different parts of life, especially when I became a mom. She would have been a super young aunt. So she would make jokes about how young she was to be an aunt. And so that was always fun. And watching her with my boys those first few years, it was like three kids playing together. She was in the floor with them. She was out in the yard with them. She was joking with them and tickling and playing games. And it was just, you would have thought she was another sibling instead of their aunt because that was her personality anyways, was just to be playful and energetic. But she was also a little bit on the younger side to be an aunt. So it was fun to watch them at that point in life. It's been a part of our genetics, I would say. It from my dad, comes from our dad. Music was just always a big part of our life. We would do this thing at my grandparents' house where Taylor was probably, I mean, she might have been 10 years old, even up to, 12, 13. And my dad would put her back to the wall next to our computer and he would play a song for like 3 seconds and he would stop it and she could spit the name of the song off and spit out the name of the artist, like just like that. And music has always been either, we both play piano. My dad played, I think in high school, guitar and drums or something maybe, but Taylor and I both play piano. So there are little snippets of her playing piano, and I have tried to learn Colorblind, which is one of the songs that she played. So I've tried to learn that as well. But music was just always, even up until our teen years, her teen years, even up until her death, music was always a part of our lives. And just being able to share the love or appreciation of similar artists, or, she was a big dancer. So music, dancing all goes hand in hand. And even still to this day, music is a part of every part of my life, whether it's just wanting to zone out and clear my mind, or if I'm cleaning the house, I have music playing. And I have no doubt that Taylor would have been the exact same way. So my sister's death was obviously very unexpected, and it's unfortunate the time of life that it was in because she did have a few years with my oldest son. He was around 5 when she passed away, but my youngest son was only a year old. He had just turned a year old in June, and then she died in July. I do have a few videos and photos of the two of them, but obviously not as much as I do with my older son. And my older son does remember her and remembers her visiting down here in Alabama where I am. And he remembers, her being around, but my youngest son doesn't. So that that's a little tough. And, it's not been the easiest thing to explain and, let them grow up with as kids. Um, at the time, my 5 year old I don't know that he really truly understood. He understood as time went on. But for my youngest, he honestly never knows a reality with her, but it obviously changed a lot of the dynamic in my family as it pertains to my kids who were her nephews. But it also changed a lot with like me and my dad and my granddad, who at the time was still alive. And that was really hard for my granddad because, being older in life and being alone because my grandmother died when I was like 19. So losing Taylor, especially the way that we did, was really hard on him. And I hate that his last few years were, I hate that was a part of his last few years. But um, for as far as my life changing with it and my dad, even on just an everyday level, it's not just missing holidays or missing birthdays or special events or anything like that, but it's also just an everyday conversation that tends to be more about what happened or what could have been, or, people asking questions about the case, you know, talking to strangers who say, "Oh, I've heard of that story," and asking what happened, or, you know, my dad and I's conversations just being more about what happened and not knowing, you know, not knowing and not having answers, instead of being able to talk about, them coming down to Alabama to visit, or talking about what Taylor did in college, and then fast forward to talk about everyday life, her boyfriend at the time. And it's the everyday conversations that we also don't get to have, but completely change the trajectory of our family as far as just everyday life goes. It's not like it just, they always say, it gets easier over time, and it does, but it never goes away. Oh, well, it's easier. Well, I wish I didn't have it at all to even compare that it's easier now than it was 5 years ago.
Right.
So, many different things over the years to keep Taylor's memory alive and make her still feel like she's a part of our everyday life. There have been many years where on holidays like Thanksgiving or Christmas, we'll go visit her gravesite. And I know Sherry and I think other people will go change her flowers out, depending on the season or the holiday. I've been up there several times to visit her gravesite. And on her birthday, the very first year that she passed away, so she died in July and her birthday was in August. And that is when I got my very first ever tattoo, just like she did. So this is her infamous tattoo. And down here, I added her initials. So that was done on her birthday. Last year, I ate Taco Bell on her birthday because Taco Bell was her favorite. So we try to implement little things here and there that are just Taylor moments or Taylor things that she liked, just to just to feel a little closer, just to feel like she's still here. Because if she were here, we would go eat Taco Bell. So those are things that we've done throughout holidays and just special events and things like that. I myself have utilized blogs and social media for the last 10 years. When she first died, I started a blog, and that was my emotional outlet because I had so many people asking me the story and asking me what happened and all the details. And back when it was so fresh and painful, it was really hard to have those conversations over and over and over. So I'm a writer by nature. So I took that opportunity to start a blog where I could write in detail even the raw emotion that I felt, but also the details of the case as it unfolded, of her story as it unfolded. And that was my way of getting it off of my chest without having to burden, friends or family with my emotional outpours, but also a way to share information. So I could get all the information out there in written form and share it with the world and answer the questions without being bombarded by people nonstop. So I started that 10 years ago when she passed away, and I kept up with it pretty consistently for several years. I kind of slacked off after the years went by, just because as life does, gets busy. But I do still monitor it. I have written in it a few times since then, just over the last few years. And then with the increase in social media and true crimers and things like that, I started utilizing my TikTok and would post videos, especially on her birthday or the anniversary, things like that, or just picking up on a trend that had something to do with losing a sibling or an unsolved crime or an unsolved missing person, things like that. So I would kind of piggyback on those trends. And I posted a lot on TikTok about her, and there's so many true crimers and unsolved documentaries that have picked it up and run with it on TikTok that I connect myself with as well. And it's been a really great place to spread information. And it's also a really great place to get feedback. And I love seeing the comments that people leave and how collectively everybody questions the same things that we do. And everybody has the same opinion about the investigation and how it went, about the people involved, about how the behavior of the people who were involved with her after seemed so sketchy and unnerving. So it's almost satisfying in some way that even strangers all across the world, all across the internet, have the same questions that we do and feel the same things that we do, because that lets us know that we're right to continue to fight even 10 years later for answers to questions that we've had and have never gotten any answers to, or the answers that we have gotten didn't make sense or were not sufficient. Definitely, I wouldn't say changed my mind as far as trusting due process or trusting an investigation or trusting law enforcement. It's not so much changed my mind as it has solidified the fact that we should never just accept answers as they're given to us. If you have a gut feeling, if you have anything in you that says something's not right here, then you have every right to ask questions and you have every right to dig further, because everything is not always as it seems. And I think in situations where somebody passes away in an environment where there are a lot of questions, there are a lot of unanswered questions, there are a lot of skeptical stories, there are a lot of even down to evidence or statements, whatever it may be. If there are questions surrounding those things, then you as the family have a right to dig further into those things. And I don't think blind trust is always a good thing, even if it's law enforcement, even if it's investigations, even if it's judges or lawyers or whoever it may be. I feel like this situation has shown me essentially that you don't have to accept answers as they're given. And just because you are presented with a conclusion doesn't mean that that conclusion is correct. So even though if you close a case, or if there is some sort of resolution, that means that somebody on that side determined that case should be closed, or we're done here, like we've heard. but that doesn't necessarily mean that the story is done. So I think it's our jobs as the loved ones that are still here, especially when we feel in our gut that something is not right, to continue to pursue more answers. And that may not necessarily change the outcome of a situation, any situation it may be, but I do believe that it is our responsibility to make sure that the due process was followed, that protocols were followed, that investigations were done correctly, that witness statements and evidence and everything else was done correctly from start to finish, because that's how you get a correct outcome and a correct conclusion. And this entire situation has just allowed me to not just take somebody's word for face value and to do my own investigation and do my own digging and follow my own breadcrumbs. And you never know where they might lead you. I have been all over the investigation details, both for my own learning, but over the years have so many people have asked questions, specifically about, why wasn't this done? Why wasn't that done? And there were critical flaws in her investigation. And that is one of the reasons that we push like we do for, more justice or a second look or to reopen the case. Because, for example, they did not swab under her fingernails, and common sense, everybody knows that the DNA that could have been under her fingernails, who knows what kind of story that have told. Those are the missing pieces where we say when due process wasn't followed. So yes, law enforcement came to a conclusion, but they didn't follow basic policies or protocols when it comes to an investigation. And when you find a female floating in water that was missing overnight, and she's, surrounded by other males, other people, strangers, friends, whoever, swabbing under her fingernails, you would think would be a part of that process and a part of a crime scene investigation. They also did not perform a rape kit, and that could have been telling as well. So there are so many critical things that were missed, that were completely overlooked or just blatantly skipped. And that could have changed the course of the investigation. So over the years, we've had so many strangers, of course, friends and family, but social media, my blog comments, we've had so many people be supportive over the years. And as I've mentioned, 99% of the comments that we get it's everything that we think, everything that we question. Why was no rape kit done? Why didn't they swab under her fingernails? Why did they not separate the campers after her body was found? Why were the campers and friends not present at her visitation or her funeral? Why did they move so quickly? Literally every aspect of the investigation and what followed after, especially the behavior of those who were with her, has been, I feel, pretty unanimous in agreeing. They all agree that the investigation was not done properly, that it was not done thoroughly, that it was not done by a qualified crime scene investigator. And to see those things in writing on social media, especially like TikTok, for people to be commenting from all over the world who do not know you, they don't truly know the story. They may have just stumbled across it and watched a video or two, or maybe read a Facebook post, or maybe read an article. But even just getting snippets of information, and they all come to the same conclusions, and those conclusions are in support of the things that we feel. It's so liberating, it's freeing, it's justifying everything that we're doing, because there have been a very, very few comments made, and those were on my blog post from many, many years ago, back just a few years after she died. There were comments that tried to victim shame her and try to say, well, she was just drunk, or didn't she have alcohol in her system? She shouldn't have been up there on that cliff. And the victim shaming is disgusting, but that's how people troll on social media. I don't take that to heart. I did a little bit at first, but that was just probably more so due to being more sensitive right after she died. But I know those people have no idea what they're talking about. They have not actually truly looked into the investigation, looked into the story, or they were just people who were trying to point fingers in other directions for their own reasons. So to have the support of strangers all over the world, all over the internet, all over social media is so important. And it keeps a fire burning that, especially me, for as much as I do on social media, that I keep going, and I'm going to keep fighting and keep digging and keep sharing. I definitely approve of us continuing our fight to find answers as to what happened that day. But knowing her personality and knowing how sarcastic and sassy she can be, she would thoroughly enjoy any kind of little pokes and little innuendos and insinuating things about the people who are with her, especially. She would really love that there are people also in those same comments that are supportive of her and express their own personal opinions about the people who are around her. So I think that she would really appreciate that we're still fighting, but I think that she would really appreciate how the manner that I do it, because I won't say that I'm not aggressive about it and I'm not ugly about it. I feel like I'm respectful about it, but I am very straightforward and honest and matter of fact about it. I don't make apologies. I state the facts as they are presented, and I give our opinions as a family. I have dug up and down her case, and I am completely qualified to make the opinions that I do, not just as her sister, but also as someone who has thoroughly investigated and read and researched everything that I have. So I don't make apologies for any of the claims that I make or any of the points that I put together for my social media posts or anything like that. So I would be like,
Go.
realistically, she'd be like, yeah, bitch. You know what I mean? So that's why I'm trying to say, like, oh, she would love that I rip them a new asshole. So I have done a lot of research and I have thoroughly investigated. I have looked at all of the documents. I have looked at her autopsy. I have read the police reports. I have read all of the articles online. I have watched numerous videos, the podcast. I've listened to everything. I've done my part in deep diving into her case, and I'm qualified not just as her sister, but as someone who actually took the time to learn the information and come up with my own opinions. And I'm completely qualified to make the opinions that I do and the statements that I do, especially on my social media. And I make no apologies for anything that I say, for any person's name that I call, any details that I share. I am simply offering the information that's already there and just putting my twist on it as her sister. And it may sometimes come off a little harsh. I have gotten a few comments from people who say that we were on a witch hunt or that we shouldn't be calling out her friends or the people that were there because, we don't know what happened. But I am of the opinion that when we did not get enough participation from the investigation, all the way down to the people who were there with her, they could have been more forthcoming with their information. They could have been more open to conversation, and they could have behaved in a way that did not raise red flags to us or other investigation. And had those things not happened, then, we may not be searching the same way that we are, but they, I feel like, led us to make the conclusions that we did, that they were not forthcoming with information, that they were not open to all of our questions, that they pled the fifth instead of answered, or, you know, moved out of town very quickly. Those are the things that led us to start questioning and the behavior. And those are the things that I will never apologize for chasing. So Taylor was always on the go. She loved being outside. She loved traveling. She got to travel more than I did. And even as, my younger sister, she got to see beautiful places and tropical places that even I had not gotten to see, that I was a little jealous of. There's a photo that you've probably seen, and it's actually the photo that's on her gravesite, and it's her arms extended out as she is standing on this beautiful mountain. And that I feel like completely personifies who she was, because she's up there on a mountain that clearly looks like it is, a deep cliff, and it's also a moment of such peace and such quiet, because she has her arms extended, and she's even got on like her baggy pants and like a t-shirt or a tank top. And it's such a good combination of her, because in that moment she was so peaceful, but it was also just her. It wasn't a glamorous photo shoot. It was her just enjoying that moment. And between traveling for things like that and being on the lake, she was always on a boat, swimming. Even when we were young, we were always outside playing. We had a creek at my grandparents' house, and we were always outside, always in the creek, riding bicycles. Even when she would visit me and visit my boys, they would be outside playing. For me, one of the most valuable lessons that I feel like my sister left behind her is the concept behind her tattoo. And it says breathe, and the tattoo itself is an arrow. And she and I actually had a conversation about it when she got it, because it did not go over so well with her mother. So I was talking to her about it one day, and she told me that the concept was for her to breathe, because she could be impulsive. And sometimes, as we probably all are, we can be impulsive, and we can speak before we think, or we can act before we think. And breathe for her was her reminder to stop and breathe before she were to do something impulsive. So that was her concept behind breathe. And then the arrow was for her to remember that even in life, when life is pulling you backwards, whether it's school is pulling you back, family pulling you back, stress, whatever it is, that it may pull us backwards, but eventually either we let go of the unnecessary stress, or whatever's going on in our life calms down, and the storm calms, and you let go and you shoot forward. So those are two of my most favorite concepts and ideas when I think of her, specifically with her tattoo. Otherwise, she was just a free spirit. She was happy all the time. She was friendly. She was um, walk in a room and light it up. She always happy, always playful, always young at heart, smiling. She loved my granddaddy because my grandmother died when I was 19. So she and my granddad were very close. And she played with him and would aggravate him like she was 2 years old, even as a teenager. We both did, really. But we were always so playful with my granddad, which is, I think, a strong character trait that you can not only still visit your grandparents, but to enjoy their time and to be playful and to be, just loving. And that's something that she and I both share as far as that part of our personality goes. To me, justice at this point would just to understand what truly happened that night. Regardless of who or who didn't, justice would be just to know. And the reason that we feel like we don't know is because we have so many questions that we didn't get answers to, or so many situations or statements or bits of evidence that didn't make sense. And that's what led us to basically question the investigation as a whole. But for me personally, justice for me would be just the truth, no matter what it is, honestly. Whether it was an accident and, they panicked and covered it up, or whether it was intentional, just to know would satisfy not just our curiosity, but that missing link to the whole story. Obviously, if something intentional happened, then the justice there would be that those responsible are held accountable. But outside of that, justice, I feel like, would also come in the form of accountability for those involved in the investigation. And that would be for the failures in the investigation, for what wasn't done correctly, for the procedures that weren't followed. I think that is also a puzzle piece to us as a family not feeling like we got justice, because we feel like the people who were involved in the investigation and the ones who were responsible failed us and failed her. So until those things are rectified, whether that's through policy changes, procedure changes, law changes, or in our case specifically, if somebody were to talk and if somebody were to say, okay, I'm going to tell you what really happened that day, even 10 years later, I would still appreciate that story. I would still appreciate the truth. And I don't think it's going to necessarily change anything. Obviously, it's not going to bring her back. It's not going to change what happened, but it will just give us a sense of peace so that we're not just wondering what happened that night. Because at the end of the day, we really don't know what happened that night. We don't know what happened after her last hours of being seen on camera and the next afternoon when she was found. That it's like that entire chunk of time is just a black hole that we as her family have no information on. And that, to go from her being alive and being playful and having fun with her friends on video to gone and floating in water, the lapse of time between that, we have no explanation for. And that's hard for us to move on. It's hard for us to close that chapter, or to say, yes, this happened, but we got our answers. It was an unfortunate situation. We can't change it, but we're okay. We can move on. But right now we can't, because we don't have answers. For me, it would just be answers. Like, I mean, people would say, y'all are just on a witch hunt. You just want to blame somebody, da, da, da. And I'm like, I can promise you in no reality would I want to think that somebody hurt my sister on purpose. No, nowhere would I want to say, oh yeah, Hannah did it, or oh yeah, Chris did it. Like, I don't want to think that. So I'm not out to blame a specific person. I just want to know what happened. Now, if that comes to be, then it is what it is. But also at the same time, if it were to have been an accident and they come out and said, oh, well, we were doing XYZ and this is what happened and we didn't know what to do. So we just threw her off and made it look like she died. Okay, at least we knew. And still, if that were to be proven, I'm not going to turn around and go, no, no, you did it on purpose. Blah, blah, blah. Like that. I'm not on a witch hunt. So as I mentioned, I have utilized social media a lot over the last few years. I actually also have an Etsy store that I just started recently because I had people asking about her tattoo and loving the symbol of her tattoo. So I designed a lot of items and put them on an Etsy store. And it's everything from t-shirts to hats to mouse pads, um, tumblers, drink coasters, stickers, anything you can imagine that I have turned her tattoo into. And I've also got a lot of items on there that have a QR code. And the QR code will take you directly to my blog. It'll take you to a landing page on my blog that's a little snippet of information. And there are links to the Etsy store and there are links to my TikTok. And on my TikTok, you will find an entire playlist of all the videos I've done about my sister, whether it was sharing information, answering questions, or just following trends about sharing memories or, just missing a sibling. So go check out the QR code and my Etsy store and the TikTok. And of course, share everything on social media. Share it anywhere and everywhere that you can. And if you get things off the Etsy store, I would love for you to take pictures of it and post it on social media because that's a way for us to keep her story going and to reach people all over the world. And that was a lot of my concept behind doing the store was to have items that people could purchase with her tattoo on them and be all over the world. And the QR code be on a sticker that is stuck to a stop sign and somebody walk up and say, what is this? And they scan it and they're immediately taken to her story. So hopefully that is another way that we can keep her story alive, keep her memory alive, and also share her breathe with the world.